Looking forward to a great show. And along the way, we are raising money for a number of great charities in the US. We're raising money for Quad A, the Association of African American Financial Advisors, and Color of Change, both in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. And the great team in the UK is raising money for CF Warriors, which is helping kids overcome cystic fibrosis, and the Stroke Association. And for those listening in other countries or have other causes that are dear to your heart, we absolutely encourage you to dig deep in your wallets today and take this opportunity for the global financial planning community to come together and to give back to a lot of great causes. So we're going to have more about all that on the show, but what do we have coming up on this show?
Yeah, so on this show today, we've got an interview with myself, and I'm going to be, not with myself, literally just by myself, but I'm going to be interviewing Dasarte Yarnway, who has launched his very own financial planning practice at the age of 24. He's an author and the founder of Young Money Podcast, and then I'm going to be wrapping up at the end with my 10-minute. But first of all, we've got the news. Oops, sorry, I think my mic's just clicked out there. First of all, we've got the news from New Model Advisor. So would you like to welcome, Kate, the New Model Advisor presenters this evening?
Sure. So we are in the US, we're popping over to CityWire RIA, and we've got Ian Wennick joining us for the news. Ian?
Thank you, Kate. So right now, the markets in the US are grinding higher. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up around 0.5%, as is the S&P 500 index. The NASDAQ is sitting up around 0.8%, and the Russell 2000 is up around 0.3%. So what I want to talk about today, obviously, the news broke over the weekend of the standoff between Attorney General William Barr, President Trump, and Jeffrey Berman, who is the top federal prosecutor for the Southern District of New York, which encompasses Manhattan. So the proposed replacement that the DOJ has sent for Jeffrey Berman is Jay Clayton. So Jay Clayton is the chairman of the SEC, which is obviously the top market regulator in the US. And if Jay Clayton does in fact become the nominee for this open position, that's going to put the SEC in a really awkward spot. So I don't know how many people realize, but the SEC is required to have a maximum of 3 members of one party. So you can't have more than 3 Republicans, you can't have more than 3 Democrats. So right now, President Trump sent a nomination on Friday for Caroline Crenshaw to become the next Democratic commissioner on the SEC, which would restore the SEC to balance. Clayton is an independent. There are 2 Republicans on the commission right now, and Crenshaw would fill the 2nd Democratic spot. So if Trump does follow through with putting Clayton in this position, it's going to create a leadership vacuum at the SEC. We don't know who he could possibly try to replace Clayton with. It could be another Republican. It could be another independent. But that's been kind of one of the unspoken trends that's kind of popped up in this big story. Obviously, people like to see that Berman was investigating Trump. There's some political intrigue, but the SEC's balance of power really could be at stake here. And I don't think many people following this story have kind of taking that to heart yet. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, I'm not sure I fully realized the gravity of that. I was trying to follow over the weekend. I feel like there were multiple people moving in and out, and they either were fired or weren't, or maybe resigned and went back to the office. And there's just so many moving chess pieces throughout this administration. It is a bit exhausting to keep up with, but important to know, like you said, the areas to pay attention to and how they might impact financial advisors in the US. So we're going to pop over to Chris Budd with his amazing t-shirts that are changing for every show. And Chris is the host of the Financial Wellbeing Podcast and founder of the Initiative for Financial Wellbeing, bringing us a financial wellbeing thought of the day. Chris, what do you have for us?
Thanks, Kate. It's got a little bit Hawaii-like with my shirt this time. I've got worse than this. I think it's almost tasteful, actually, compared to some of the others. So I want to just talk about the financial wellbeing process. The Initiative for Financial Wellbeing is a new institute we set up in the UK to study and help promote the idea that money is a tool for well-being, that it's not actually there as an objective. And in fact, if you see it as an objective, you're likely to be less happy than you would otherwise be. So there's 2 parts I've been talking about all day, about the universal truths, what makes everybody happy or unhappy, and what makes you personally happy. So we need to combine those two things. So the process includes working out what is reducing your well-being, and that might be your behaviors. Catherine, I expect later on, is going to talk about money behaviors. That's really her bag. But I'm also talking about behavioral finance. So some of it's the self-limiting beliefs, but it's also the stuff around loss aversion and cognitive biases, such as loss aversion and the endowment effect. All these things that stop us from being happy. So the process that I would suggest is, number one, the know thyself. Help a client to understand what makes them happy. Secondly, talk to them about some of the universal truths, a bit of education for the client. Thirdly, find out what behaviors they exhibit, which might be reducing their well-being. And then you bring that together in order to increase their well-being. Because at the end of the day, what is the point of financial planning if it's not going to increase their happiness? So if you combine those things together, you can, if you like, call it a financial well-being overlay to the financial planning process that will hopefully help your clients to be happier, not just wealthier.
Love that. It is all about being happier. And we heard on some of the earlier shows talking about, even research behind really wealthy people and what they spend their money on, and that it's not about just having lots of money. That does not inherently make you happy. So yeah, making sure you're having those right conversations. Really looking forward to Catherine's segment later in the show. But Catherine, what do we have up next?
Yeah, thanks, Kate. And thanks very much for that insight, Chris. That's really interesting. It reminds me of that kind of law of subtraction. So law of attraction is about what we seek, and law of subtraction is about what can we get rid of that actually takes us away from our financial well-being. So yeah, really great thought there, Chris. Thank you. So I'm really excited now because we're interviewing our next guest, and Dasarte Yarnway. Hi, Dasarte. How are you doing this evening? Oh, do you want to unmute yourself?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
Yeah, fabulous. Thanks so much for asking. All good.
Good.
Like hugely inspired to interview this evening, Dasarte. I've read your blog recently. I was really inspired by that over the weekend with everything that's going on at the moment. And you started a financial planning firm at the age of 24. Like, that's nuts.
Yeah.
So talk to us about what led you to start a financial planning at such a young, sprightly age, and what made you passionate about doing that?
Looking back, if I knew what I knew now that I know then, I think I would have been less motivated to start the firm, right? Because it was an uphill climb, but I'm so happy that I did it. At the time, I went from an independent brokerage firm, and then I went to a brokerage firm that was Main Street, and then I went to a bank on Wall Street, one of the largest banks in the world. And I saw at each of these firms that I didn't think that they were serving the clients deep enough. At the core of financial planning, the clients come first. You want to make sure that you're putting their needs first, their interests first, and also doing what's best for them. I didn't think that that was what was happening. So I decided to create the firm that I wanted to see. And that's how Burknell Financial Group was born.
Amazing. And I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with that, not going deep enough with, particularly in that kind of environment. Tell us a little bit about the subscription model that applies to your service, WealthBridge, at Burknell Financial Group. Yeah,
so while being at the bank, I was a vice president. I was 24 years old at the time, right? And you can imagine that a 24-year-old doesn't know many people with $2 million in assets, right? So I thought to myself that there was an opportunity to serve those who were underserved, but still needed the help, right? So these were people like my mother, people like my friends and family, but we needed it to make sense for them as it pertains to how they would pay the firm. So we created this barbell strategy. On one end, that would be a traditional way to pay folks, which would be the percentage-based fee. On the other side was our retainer-based service that was all-inclusive, financial planning, investment management, tax services, as well as estate services for a flat monthly fee. And it's proven to be well for our firm.
And how many clients do you have on that subscription model?
Year to date, or I think since its inception, we have about 50 clients that are in that WealthBridge platform.
Amazing. I love that. That's incredible. I love that you're helping to serve that model in a completely different way. So that's awesome. And the other thing that you have is you run a podcast, the Young Money podcast. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that and how that's benefited you in your business.
The way that I look at the Young Money podcast, the blog, these are all virtual handshakes for people that otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to hear my voice or meet me, right? So being a young advisor at 24, a lot of the things that you want to do in terms of your prospecting efforts is just prove yourself. I can do this, I'm competent, right? And you can trust me as it pertains to your financial wellness. So what I decided to do was to start writing, and Young Money, the book that came out in 2018, led to the podcast. And today we interview professionals like yourself to say, hey, why don't you come and give some tidbits on finance that our clients can take and design their wealth with. I think since its inception, we've had about almost 100 episodes, and we plan on scaling that for the rest of the year.
Awesome. That's fabulous. So you're 100 episodes in.
Yeah, close to it. And it's been one that I've been able to network and kind of interview some of the biggest names in the industry, professional football players, as well as financial experts. And it's been a show that I think year to date has about 15,000 weekly viewers.
Wow, that's amazing. And are there any particular guests that you'd love to get on the show in the next 6 months?
In the next 6 months, that's tough. I mean, I'm open to interviewing Josh Brown from Ritholtz Wealth Management would be somebody that I want to interview. I have a lot of professional athletes that I work with, so somebody like Jerry Rice would be cool to interview as well, that has that experience and depth with wealth, and that can give advice for people that are following in his footsteps.
Yeah, awesome. Well, hopefully he's listening to this so that we can get him on your show for you.
I hope so too.
And you recently wrote an incredibly brave piece recently called "It Could Have Been Me" in relation to the George Floyd and obviously the police brutality. Can you tell us a little bit about that piece and why you wrote it and the reaction that you've had since writing it?
Yeah, well, that was a tough one to write. I think that when you are climbing, right, and you're finding success in whatever it is that you're doing as an African man or as an African-American man, you begin to start to see this ideology of exceptionalism, which essentially means that this could never happen to Dasarte because he's doing all of these things. So I felt like I needed to write "It Could Have Been Me" because it does happen to me too, right? And in this article, I didn't want to kind of race bait or cause any controversy. What I wanted to do is say that, hey, we're all human. This is a human issue. And together, if we approach it that way, we can definitely make change in our world. So that was a perspective. I've had tons of awesome feedback. I was asked by Financial Planning Magazine to write an op-ed about this, right? I've been asked from a number of publications to write about this. And I think that we're all slowly making the change that we wish to see.
Yeah, oh, good for you. Well, like, massive congratulations, because it's a really thought-provoking piece. And I'd really highly recommend that anyone who hasn't read it, go and read it this evening. It's incredibly inspiring. So thank you so much. And towards the end of the piece, you talk about some kind of really key actionable bullet points for how we can improve as a society. Could you perhaps share those with us this evening?
Yeah, so towards the end of the piece, I wrote 8 points, 8 things that we can do. I don't have the answers to cure racism or cure any of this stuff that's going on in the world, but I think that if we take these 8 pieces of advice, we can make the world a safer and better place for us all. So the first piece is stand up when you see racism perpetuating. That's simply saying we don't do that here, or that's not right, right? So it's not a long drawn out essay that you have to say to somebody, but just saying, hey, this isn't right. Number 2 is just speak out when you see something that is morally unjust. Like, I don't think this is right, right? And that goes a long way. Number 3 is just have compassion for your fellow human. If I see you as a human, my sister, my brother, right? That will make the world and the streets safer. Number 4, support businesses and people who are not as privileged, right? I think that oftentimes we have a tendency to just do the things or go to the places where we feel comfortable, but know that every dollar that you sow into a community or a business that might not have you as a customer or might not be privileged enough to have that economic stability, right, goes a long way. The next is just acknowledging your privilege. You have privilege, I have privilege, we all do. So just acknowledging and saying like, hey, this is something I understand, and this is something that I have. I want to be able to share it with others, right? Be aware of your racial predispositions, right? And work to uproot them. I think that we all have things that we believe to be true that might not be, right? Like African Americans are like this, or this particular group is like this. If we work to uproot those predispositions, perhaps we can see people for who they are, right? And see their hearts. The next 2, encourage your kids to be open and fair to all, right? And the last one is just reach out to somebody of a different race and tell them that you appreciate them. I think all these things can be beneficial for, curing racism.
Yeah, I love those. Thank you so much for sharing those. And finally, what would be your future goals? And what are you most excited about in the world of financial planning right now?
My future goals continue to scale Burknell Financial Group. I think we're doing some interesting things in terms of how we serve our clients and our innovation. I recently just incorporated a real estate development company, so I look forward to acquiring a few properties here in the East Coast. And in terms of the future of financial services, I look forward to seeing how we begin to serve our clients, right? I think that we've been so limited with a mentality of acquiring assets under management. And I think that that's going to transition soon into financial wellness and total financial independence, right? So I think that as the investor gets more savvy, so will the way that advisors serve their clients.
And just out of interest there, you mentioned about financial wellness being define financial wellness.
I would define that as the holistic serving of a person's financial goals, right? So that's going to include what they believe to be true in the world. That's going to include their design or their definition of wealth, because my definition of wealth could be very different from yours, right? And then serving those things, so spiritual, physical, emotional, right? And in terms of your money, financial well-being, that's a holistic approach to financial wellness to me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I like, and it's very important, isn't it, to focus on all of. I think my mic keeps going in and out this evening, but thank you so much for your pearls of wisdom this evening, Dasarte. You've been incredible, and please, again, just to say, if anyone hasn't read Dasarte's blog, it's absolutely amazing. I'd really recommend you do that. So thanks so much for your time. And Kate, what do we have next?
Yes, thank you, Catherine. And Dasarte, thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you for being an inspiration, even for starting your business at 24. And you're so involved in the profession. I see you all over the place. So honored to have you here. Dasarte, we appreciate you. And I really like the simplicity of some of those tips. It could be even in the grocery store, seeing, either a racial injustice, a moral injustice, and being the one to speak up. It's those little acts of kindness that go so far. So thank you for reminding us of the little things that we can do in our day-to-day lives to help make the world a better place.
Thanks a lot, Kate.
Thank you. So we're going to cross over to the UK. We mentioned one of the elements of the 24-hour global commute is raising money for great organizations. So checking in with some of our charity heroes, we'll start with Gretchen Betts, who is on a 24-hour extreme crafting challenge. Gretchen, what are you working on now?
Hi, Kate. Yep, I've moved on. So the last hour, I was finishing off the box for the Worry Pet. So they're in the box, so you can't really. They're in the box.
Super fun. Yeah.
And then this is the lid saying Jackson's Pets for Jackson. So that's just drying. I just covered that in just normal kind of colored paper, and then wrote a little tag for him. So I honestly, when I make stuff, it's just like, what would I have loved, especially for kids, it's like, what would I have loved as a kid? That's all I go on. I just literally that's it. That's my my inspiration. So there's lots of them that will all fit in, so that's quite fun. The next thing I'm going to make is is for my niece, actually, because she's going to be 1 in 2 weeks time. Her name's Betsy. And I've cut out, I really wanted to make something for her room, and so I've cut out this really big, I prepared in advance this very big bee, and I'm going to it's like I'm on some TV program, isn't it? I'm going to cover it in faux flowers, basically. So I've got a whole box full of they were from eBay. They were very expensive. I kind of prep them in advance so I know that they're about the right shape, etc. And I'm gonna yet again use my glue gun and probably get stuck all over the place, but hopefully this will be covered in lots of beautiful flowers, and then be able to go on her bedroom wall. So that's my next thing.
That's awesome. I honestly, I will not get over how impressed I am that you just keep coming up with all these things. You're going back to back to back. It's really amazing. And for those that might just be tuning in, all of the charity challenges in the US are all being done by financial planners, people that are part of Next Gen Planners that, you know, this is a Monday. They could be working in their business, on their business, but they realized it's important to come together, raise money for great organizations. We've got links to other organizations, including, like I mentioned, Quad A, the Association of African American Financial Advisors in the US, and Color of Change, raising money for Black Lives Matter. So let's pop over next and check in and see how Jess is doing as she's climbing Britain's highest mountain on her stairs.
Hello, yes. Well, I'm still here. I'm 212 flights of stairs down now, and the leg shakes have just started to kick in. So it's making it a little bit harder. I feel like I'm getting a bit clumsy as I'm climbing up and down. But yeah, still going strong.
So you're getting close to halfway then.
Getting close. I think it's about 290-ish to halfway. So I'm almost there. 60 more steps to halfway.
Yeah, well, that's impressive. You're definitely a little more out of breath, so I can tell you're
a little bit
you're further on than
the camera's doing me a lot of favors here. I'm bright red.
And do you have snacks to go throughout? We were chatting with Steve earlier about the need to make sure you keep your energy up throughout this.
So today I've just been using it as an excuse to pig out. I'm carb loading. So I've eaten so much today that I don't think I need to eat now for a while. But I've got lots of coffee, I've got my vitamin drinks, and I've got pints of water. So I'm keeping hydrated now.
Awesome. Well, I can totally appreciate using it as a great reason to pig out. Jess, thank you for checking in with us. We're going to check in with you on the next show, and we'll pop over to Steve Martin, who has been cycling away.
Yeah, still cycling. 89 miles done. For those carb loading off the back of Jess and I's activities, 3,061 calories extra. Can be consumed about 22, 23 miles. So if it wasn't at the end of this, and if I was actually fit, then I would knock that off quite easily in under an hour, but I think we'll be here for a while yet. Just want to say a very big thank you to Sharon Sutton, who's watching us on YouTube, watching my shocking cycling technique, tweeted me to say, I think your seat might be a centimetre too high, which is why your ass is sore. So put your seat down and you'll stop rocking. And I put my seat down and we are in an improved situation. So massive thanks to Sharon, and well done YouTube and the global financial community looking out for its suffering cyclists, from one cyclist to another.
Awesome. And Steve, I know you said your son is excited to go to the pool whenever you're done, but yeah, knowing you might not be able to walk the next couple of days, what do you have planned?
Well, I'm running a training session first thing tomorrow morning on first meeting skills. So good luck anybody who's coming along to that. I will be sitting. Well, I don't know. I'll probably be lying on my front, I think. and very much relying on my colleague Damien to deliver the bulk of the content. So yeah, not a massive amount, to be honest, Kate, not a massive amount. A bit of nothingness, really. But that's all right. I'm actually starting to quite enjoy it. I must be delirious because I am quite enjoying it now. I think the fact that my feet and my ass hurt means I don't feel my legs anymore. You know, like the body's only capable of feeling a certain amount of pain at any one time. So, you know, that kind of schoolboy principle that if your arm was sore, your mate would punch you in the stomach or something and your arm would stop hurting. So I think I've got a little bit of that going on now. So we're getting there. There will be no quitting. We will get to the end. And you lot better be spending your money. You better be spending your money.
Yes, and
you guys, obviously, you guys are working hard also. But
not as hard as you. No, I'm feeling very relaxed sitting here. But that is the key point. This is all about raising money for charity, whether it's one of the 4 that we have links to or another one, like I said, that's important to you. So let's support Black Lives Matter in the US. Let's support CF Warriors and the Stroke Association in the UK, and tons of other worthy organizations that especially have been impacted negatively throughout COVID-19 from not being able to do fundraisers, not being able to get the word out. So let's all come together as a global community and show what we can do. So thanks, Steve. Thanks to everyone doing those challenges.
Pleasure.
Thanks to everyone supporting. And take it away, Catherine, with your coaching focus.
Yeah, great. I'm feeling incredibly lazy right now. I'm not using my hands and I'm not exercising. So I'm feeling incredibly lazy, but I'm really excited to bring my coaching focus to you this evening. And I wanted to talk about a subject which I'm going to be diving much more into tomorrow. I've got a full hour's presentation to deliver tomorrow on this subject, but I wanted to bring something around bringing some consciousness to our clients' language. So we know that many of our clients remember how we make them feel rather than just the practical advice. You know, even building relationships with people, it's how we make people feel. And we know that there are so many emotions connected with money. You know, there's negative emotions and positive emotions, and financial well-being is about creating more positivity around money. But actually, what's interesting for me is about what meaning do we attach to money? And it's the meaning that we all attach to money that then give us the emotions. So whether that's stress or anxiety, whether it's happiness or pleasure or joy or judgment or shame, all of these different emotions, it's the meanings that we attach to money that then create and harbor the emotions. So a little exercise that you can do is to think about, how do we spot a client's relationship with money? How do we know what they believe about money? And one of the really simple ways to do that is to bring some curiosity to their language. Because we want to really kind of support them with their emotional relationship with money. And that's how we make most of our decisions. So we know that from a scientific perspective that 90% of our decisions that we make come from what we call our unconscious minds, or our unconscious part of our brain. And I know that this was talked actually in Brad Clonce's presentation today about the subconscious belief system. So how do we actually understand what that looks like for our clients? So one of the things that you can do is to think about paying some attention to what they're saying about money, either in their communications, in their conversations with you, or even in their written language to you. So perhaps they fired you an email recently to say, oh my goodness, the stock market's crashed. I'm feeling really worried. I want to take some money out because I'm afraid how it's going to impact on my retirement, or something like that. Then it is to look out for those crumbs of language that they're using in those communications with you. And it's the words that they're using which will come from their unconscious mind. So if a client emails you or picks up the phone and has a conversation with you, just literally pay some attention to what language are they using? What words are they using? What do you hear them saying? And you can pick up on that language and say and reflect that back to them. So for example, if they sent you an email to say, look, I'm really worried about the stock market, I want to take some money out, is you could then reflect that back and say, okay, so what I've noticed that you've said, or what I read in your email, or what I heard you say was this, and then ask them a really open question. So a really great way of positioning a question with a client is to replace the word why with the word what. So what's important to you about that? What impact would it have for you? Could we work together to help remove some of that negative emotion around money? So you reflect back what the client says, and then you ask a question to explore that deeper with them. Because behind those crumbs of language that they're using lies new possibilities for a sense of well-being, new possibilities to feel better about money. And if we can actually encourage and work together with clients around how they feel, that's going to help to change how they behave around money. So just remember that little crumbs of language. What are they using in their communications to you? What are they saying to you? And how can you reflect that back to then help them to have a better, more positive financial well-being and sense of purpose? So that's my little coaching focus for today. Now our next show is going to be at 7:30 UK time, so in 30 minutes time, and we're going to be chatting to Lauren Williams, who's a financial planner. She's also a 4-time Olympian and the first American woman to medal in both the summer and the winter Olympic Games. And in a specially extended show, Dominic Coloseno, who we heard from earlier, is also going to be back with some more tips on how to present online with impact.
Fantastic. Thanks, Catherine, and thanks for those great tips. You've got so much awesome knowledge to share on that. I really love your perspective and the fact that so much of it comes from your personal experience. So you've lived through all of it. So thanks for sharing that. So I will be back we've got half an hour. So ended this show just about on time. And my guest will be Luis Rosa, and we will look forward to seeing you there. In the meantime, dig deep in those pockets, make those donations, and we'll be putting up more links to donate in the YouTube link. So bye for now.
Thanks, guys.